how do you stop the acceleration of the increase of this also?
Well, unfortunately, the answer to that is an independent Congress. Congress gets a lot of money from the telecom industry, and so they vote alongside the telecom industry. This is one of the main obstacles. I assume, like with the tobacco industry before it will come to a point where, as the ball is rolling now, it's becoming more and more obvious to more and more people. So it becomes almost not worth the money, or there has to be another way of getting this money. But as it stands now, the telecom industry is funneling millions of dollars into Congress, and this is keeping the Telecom Act from being, revisited or altered in any way. And in fact, President Obama, not too long ago, was looking at legislation that would make it even more favorable for the telecom companies. So it's actually moving in the opposite direction from where it needs to be going.
Now, I understand that T-Mobile lost a case in New York. I want you to talk about that. And there are other cases coming up in Canada and New Zealand where citizens are standing up and not taking it in anymore. But talk about that case with T-Mobile in New York.
The T-Mobile case, essentially, they wanted to put antenna on a roof, and they came with a proposal to the people living in the co-op building, and the people in the co-op building read it over. It seemed all right to them. They would make X amount of dollars every month. It seemed like a good deal to them. Somebody came up to one of the tenants and said, "Look, we were reading about this. Let's do some research." They found out that it's not as safe and as they thought it would be, and they decided that they wouldn't have it. Now they were able to use a loophole in this case where the telecom company actually misrepresented the weight and size of the antenna. So they didn't go to court based on the health effects or the fact that the building would be liable if this antenna fell off the roof and hit somebody on the sidewalk, according to the contract. What they did was they said, "Look, you said it would be X amount of pounds. It's about 4 times that weight. We decided we don't want it." T-Mobile, they countersued them. It was in court for a few years. It went back and forth between two different layers of court, and in the end, the court case was dropped by T-Mobile because the case in New York, as we've seen in other places in the country and other places in the world, if you stand up to them, and if you have some sort of loophole that doesn't fall under the health, it doesn't fall in the field of health,
like the Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Like the Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Talk about that. Share with the audience what that is.
It's the two of the lawyers in the film, the Seymours, were defending a lady who suddenly found these antennae on a firehouse not far from her house. She has 2 small children, and she was worried about them. And they went back and forth trying to find out what loophole they could use. And they found, there are some rare and endangered birds visiting this lady's property. And they decided to go with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act that protects all birds. They're, based on the risk that birds might fly into this antenna, they took this thing to court. And they said the Migratory Bird Treaty Act comes before the Telecom Act, so one can't cancel out the other because it's an international treaty. The case is still in court, unfortunately, and I don't know which way it will come out, obviously, as with most court cases. But what's been shown with other cases is that if you're persistent and if you have a loophole, it becomes, counter-effective cost-wise for these telecom companies to pursue it. So they say, "Oh, we'll go somewhere else and do it." This is unfortunate for the people that live somewhere else, but if those people that live somewhere else also found a loophole, then you can have the telecom companies on the defensive. And this is where they need to be. They need to be on the defensive in order for us to find some sort of, more general solution across the board. Right now they're on the offensive, and they're using the Telecom Act as their basis to be on this offensive. So it's finding these loopholes It's finding, as Peter Vallone mentions in the film, finding the dangers of having too much weight on a balcony, for example, taking the fire marshal back and forth to different buildings to try and find just this little ounce of hope here or there, which will overcome the Telecom Act. Health and safety concerns that have nothing to do with the radiation, because you can't discuss that one. And this is what they're trying to do. And as you mentioned, in some places they are finding success. There are a couple cases in New York State. In France there was another case. People, as they're becoming more and more aware, are able to find these avenues, these back roads, shall I say, to removing these antennae, or stopping them from going up in the first place.
Now, I know that one of the important things that I think it was Peter Malone was talking about was requiring the cell phone companies to provide community notice when towers are going up, even when they're thinking about putting it up somewhere. And also this co-location capability. What does that mean?
Well, co-location means having more than one antenna on the same tower. Now, when you look at a tower, you see these white things on the sides of it. There are usually three or four or five or six, depending on the size of the antenna,
Right.
Size of the tower. Those are different antenna. They all belong to the same company. So, I mean, the argument here is, why not share these antenna, and instead of having, four or five different towers and antenna in the same neighborhood, why not use the same antenna? I don't think the companies are interested in this, because
they don't want to cooperate.
They don't want to cooperate. They all want to make their buck. So this is one problem. The other issue that he was dealing with is, inform us where the towers are going to go.
Exactly. And why they need the towers at all in that spot.
Well, he found resistance here, in the fact that people said, well, look, this is a security concern. We can't tell you where the towers are going up because of security. Peter Vallone made a very interesting remark that didn't actually make it into the film. He said, they tell people where the towers are going up in Israel. Are you saying that we have more security concerns than they do in Israel? It was a very difficult road for him to take, and I don't know if he's had success since then. The last time we communicated, he was still almost in the same spot with this. But in Portland, Oregon, is a very interesting story. I showed the film there a little while after it came out, and attending the film was a city council person and a state representative. And the city council person, after watching the film, they took this to their committee meeting, and they actually decided to make it more difficult to put these antenna in residential neighborhoods. They classified the town according, from 1 to 4 zones, based on whether it's industrial, commercial, partly residential, or heavily residential. And they made it that much more difficult to put it in zones classified as residential.
I think that's great.
I think this is the short-term solution, is put these on industrial buildings, put these on factories, put these away from schools, away from hospitals, away from children. These are the main concerns that we have, that the scientists in the film have. Put them on industrial buildings, put them on commercial buildings, places where people aren't sleeping, because sleep is a very important part of the life cycle, where people's bodies actually start to repair themselves. So if they're still being inundated with all this radiation, they don't have this chance to repair their bodies the way they should do. So take them out of the residential areas. We're not saying eliminate them altogether, because that at present is a little unrealistic. So take them out of residential areas and put them in industrial and commercial areas. That's the first step. And I think this is a solution, a temporary solution at least, that people can actually work on, and you still get your cell signal.
Signals are really everywhere, aren't they?
They're absolutely everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere.
What has been the reception, talk about reception, to your movie? I know it's probably just a feat to get it done and produced and in the can, edited, and then in a DVD format. But now that it's in a DVD format, are people buying it? Are you finding that there's resistance?